And also making headlines tomorrow, we do expect a settlement announcement after cameras recorded a man in Alpharetta yelling at Muslim women. The attorneys for the women say they have reached a monetary settlement with Perry Greene without having to officially file a lawsuit. We're told Greene reached out to them first and offered to publicly apologize, which he did after attending a sermon at the mosque where the women worship. Their lawyer says the deciding factor to not officially sue came because Greene met the demands of the women for him to be educated about the Islam religion and also his apology.
I think this is a step in the right direction to show, even in what many would call a very nasty video, Muslims responded with grace. And I think that's the balance that must be struck. In times of divisiveness and hate, someone has to step forward and extend the olive branch of peace.
The lawyers will announce the exact amount that Greene paid the women at a press conference tomorrow morning, and we're told that the matter will then be fully resolved.